Now, no matter which way you feel about Abby in the story of The Last of Us Part 2, trust me, I don't really love her either, but she is a really fun character to play in No Return, and I'd argue is actually one of the better characters when it comes to survivability. So today, we're going over the ultimate Abby guide when it comes to playing No Return. Now, on the character selection screen, it says that Abby has a close combat playstyle, and that is absolutely the case. That is the way that you want to be playing Abby, up close and personal, and most of the time, pretty much just using her fists. Now, Abby starts with just the regular pistol as well as a hammer, which obviously deals a lot more damage than just using your fists. On top of that, the traits that she gets are the health on melee kills. She also gets a melee upgrade recipe, and then on top of that, she gets the brawler upgrade branch. Now, starting out with the melee upgrade recipe is definitely very helpful. Pretty much as soon as you guys find some scissors and tape, you can then upgrade your hammer that you spawn in with, or if that's already been broken, you can just pick up something like a pipe, for example, or even a plank of wood, and that will upgrade that, putting, a pair of scissors on the end of it essentially. It's kind of different for each weapon, but it will just restore that weapon's durability and also increase its damage. And it is obviously very clutch for that melee combat, as you're going to get a lot of 1 or 2 hit kills compared to most other characters taking about 4 to 6 hits to kill an enemy. Now, when it comes to her upgrade branch, which like I said is the brawler upgrade branch, what I would recommend is that you definitely want to upgrade the first tier of that branch as soon as possible. This will not only give you the HP on the melee kills that you get by default, but also HP on just melee hits in general, kill or not. So literally just punching an enemy in the face, that will grant you with health, not just when you kill them. And that is a huge upgrade, especially considering you can pretty much get that right away after the first encounter. Now, in that same upgrade branch, after that first one, the momentum and momentum duration perks are also 100% worth learning and should essentially be your priority. You want to be getting those finished as soon as you can, as they make you pretty damn OP in hand-to-hand combat, and they especially help when it comes to getting swarmed by multiple enemies at once. How the momentum system works is that once you get a kill in melee, the next hit is then what is called a strike, and a strike is essentially just a higher damage hit that also stuns enemies. And then the momentum duration perk, the final one in that path, pretty much just makes the momentum last longer. So it gives you a bigger duration between hitting each enemy and getting those strikes. And trust me, if you can get multiple of these strikes chained together, you can absolutely dominate groups of enemies with something as simple as your fists. Now, before we go any further, if you guys are enjoying the video so far and you are new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button. There is plenty more content like this on the way. I'll be doing this for 8 other characters in the game, and there is also the alley guide that is already up, so make sure you don't miss out. Now, obviously, being strong in close quarters, that means that you want your fights to take place in a building or something like that. You don't want to be fighting out in the open. So when possible, try and just stay away from those sort of long range engagements or just really open areas of the map in general. Obviously, that can't always be the case. There are some maps that do just have wide open areas. And obviously, if you've got long range weapons, that is still completely fine. But like I said, melee is absolutely your strength. So in those situations, even if you do have long range weapons, it is still worth actually kind of drawing the enemies in towards you. If they've got weapons, they can deal damage from essentially any range. Whereas if they're, a meter away from you, yes, they can still shoot you, but you can also hit them. And once you hit an enemy, they are pretty much going to stop shooting you, at which point the fight is definitely on your terms, because Abby is much stronger when it comes to melee combat than most regular enemies. Because of that, like I said, when possible, just try and draw enemies in towards you. That could be being in stealth and then just popping up, killing one enemy with your gun. That'll then alert all of those other enemies and then pretty much just draw them in towards you, at which point you can have your fun by pretty much just beating the shit out of anyone who comes through that door. Now, it might sound kind of counterintuitive, but stealth is still very much key when it comes to playing as Abby, despite her being kind of known as a brawler. Even with the upgrade paths that I just mentioned in terms of being able to chain together melee kills and stuff like that, whenever possible, you don't really want to be fighting multiple enemies at once in close combat. That is most of the time not going to go in your favor. And so you do still want to be trying to split your enemies up rather than fighting multiple at once. Obviously, sometimes you can't help it, but if you can help it, that is definitely something you want to be doing. And generally that can be done by being stealthy. Crawling around the map and just staying in stealthy areas does make it a lot easier when it comes to just splitting those enemies up. You can kind of pick and choose who you're going to go for. You can take out the enemies who have weapons first, for example, in terms of guns, because essentially the more enemies you take out who have guns, that is going to really put that fight in your favor. Because if you're in a melee combat with one enemy, for example, and there is an enemy sitting back shooting at you, that doesn't does not help you whatsoever. So like I said, try and sort of split those enemies up, focus first on the ones with the guns, and then after that, if there's even 3 or 4 enemies left still, but they're all just carrying like a bat, for example, you are definitely going to fare better in that fight compared to a fight with a bunch of enemies who have guns. Now, something else to remember with Abby, and to be honest, this kind of just goes for everyone, but it's just crucial for this playstyle. This is constantly dodging rather than just spamming attacks when it comes to that hand-to-hand combat. A lot of people will kind of dodge the initial attack from the enemy, whether it's infected or someone with a baseball bat, for example, and then they'll kind of lay into them, just beating the shit out of them. And don't get me wrong, sometimes that does work. They often won't fight back, but especially on the higher difficulties, you will often only get maybe 1 or 2 hits in before the enemy will then throw another punch at you. And obviously, if you don't dodge that, you're going to take damage, at which point all of the health you're gaining from your melee, I guess, ability that you gain health with, you're just kind of losing that straight away. So the best way to play this is kind of treating it almost like Souls-like combat, in that you want to just dodge an attack, get a few hits in, and then just kind of stand back until they attack you again. Simply dodge that next attack again, and then get a few more hits in and keep doing that until the enemy's dead. Doing that will just keep giving you health through the melees, but obviously you're not going to take damage yourself, or at least you're going to take a lot less damage than if you just tank hits from those enemies. And this is something that whenever I've seen other gameplay, I see a lot of people not really doing that, because it kind of feels as though once you dodge that initial attack, you can just lay into the enemy. Like I said, sometimes it works, but especially on the higher difficulties, that will just essentially be a waste of health. Now, in terms of weapons, I would definitely say that shotguns are great for Abby, since if you're obviously playing in close quarters already, they are just perfect for a fallback option. If you get kind of overrun, you can just pull out your shotgun and you're obviously in the perfect situation to use it, whereas it is much harder to kind of just fall back on something like a bolt action rifle, for example, when the enemies are so close. It's a lot harder to be accurate with a bolt action compared to a shotgun. So if you get the chance to buy a shotgun in the trading post, it is absolutely worth doing so. On top of that, it's also worth upgrading your shotguns and just generally your close quarters favorable weapons, since they will suit your playstyle more and are obviously a bit more crucial to upgrade. So it's still worth having rifles or bows for long range. In fact, you almost kind of need to have some sort of long range weapon just as a bit of a backup if there is a sniper, for example. But when possible, you want to be saving your parts to upgrade the shotguns and stuff like that, because they are going to be a lot more crucial. And you know, a bolt action rifle is already going to deal high damage. It's already going to do its job. Whereas if you can upgrade your shotgun to have a faster rate of fire and more damage and stuff like that, then that is going to get you out of a pinch in those close quarter situations. Now, depending on the difficulty, something else that is worth keeping in mind is that it could be wise to save some of your materials that are normally used for medkits, since the health on melee kills can kind of keep you healed up, provided you are playing the melee combat right. You don't necessarily need all 3 medkits unless you are maybe on survivor or grounded. So save those resources in case you want to craft a Molotov or something, until of course you do get full on those resources. Then it is definitely worth just making another medkit and keeping the spare parts for Molotovs. But I would definitely say if you don't have like full resources and stuff like that, don't spend all of them straight away on medkits. With most other characters, I would probably recommend that. Medkits are crucial for pretty much everyone else, but for Abby, being able to get health through another means that you don't actually need to rely on those medkits as often. Overall, Abby is actually a really good character if you are comfortable with melee combat, as she is obviously much tankier than most characters due to those health on melee kills and just the melee in general. It allows you to kind of make it a long way through the first 5 encounters by saving ammo and just kind of upgrading your weapons and gadgets in the background without really even needing to use them as often. And then once you get through that boss fight, you can kind of just have all of that stuff saved up and pretty much just dump all of that ammo into the boss, making that fight a lot easier. Because trust me, you don't want to get through the boss fight and then try to get in a punch on with a bloater, for example. That is not going to end well. So saving all of your ammo and stuff for that final boss fight is definitely the way to go. And that kind of happens just naturally by obviously playing a very melee focused playstyle. But that is it for some of the best tips and tricks when it comes to playing as Abby in No Return. I'm keen to hear any other tips that you guys have, so be sure to leave those down in the comment section. And like I said, keep your eyes peeled for all 8 of the other characters. I've already done Ali, so be sure to go and check that one out. But with that being said, thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day, and I'll catch you all in the next one.